It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. Also, while you're there, go check us out on the listening platforms over on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. Follow us on the channels there so you never miss an episode. And go check out the YouTube if you're not watching there already. We are going to be continuing to do, since this is a Steelers episode, I'll say that especially, the Steelers Saturday sit down. We had a ton of people in there, over 3,500 people in there on Saturday morning, which was awesome. Had a good time previewing the Denver game. But we're going to have content coming out on YouTube. Go check it out. Subscribe to the channel. Also, while you're there, look at the description. Whether you're finding this on YouTube or the listening platforms, we have several links to some of our sponsors, but the top link from now to December is year 7 of Rocking Around the 412. Football time is typically when this mission starts to take off. We start to see a lot more donations start to come in. So we want to continue to push this message. It's our Christmas fundraiser, being able to help children in the local 724-412 area codes in the Pittsburgh area. We provide Christmas for them with the help of everybody that donates, as well as we also have the past few years partnered with the East Rochester, PA Salvation Army and adopted kids off of their angel tree. If you're interested in any of that, the top link of the description is going to be that Rocking Around the 412 Year 7 GoFundMe link. You can donate there. You can share the message there, copy the link, post it on social media. You never know whose eyes are going to see this sort of thing, so you just want to get it out as much as possible. But yeah, Rocking Around the 412 Year 7 in the description. This is a Steelers show, as I mentioned, and somehow, some way, we find ourselves at 2-0, and not only 2-0 after 2 road games in the first 2 weeks, but also 2 games ahead of the Bengals, 2 games ahead of the Ravens, and leading the AFC North. If anybody told you this was going to happen after 2 weeks, we would have signed up for it no matter what.
Sure. Yeah. And I know that there's obviously going to be some detractors because of the way that the offense has looked and, the level of competition or whatever. I think that was Atlanta's going to be a good team, in my opinion, by the end of the year. And I think on Monday Night Football, even just from week 1 to week 2, you saw a vast improvement in the way that football team looked. I don't think Denver's going to be very good. So that's a whole nother thing itself. I think they're going to be picking top 5 for sure, maybe even top 3. I don't think very highly of Bo Nix. Thought he was a 3rd-round player that they took 12th overall. We can get into the specifics of that game, but just some general thoughts on them starting out 2-0. Listen, I understand that there's certainly a level, even my own level of concern with the offense for sure. Don't get me wrong. But anytime that you win 2 games on the road, nonetheless, dealing with the quarterback situation that they had, Justin Fields, found out about 48 hours before the game, probably, that he was going to be the starter, and that's giving them the benefit of the doubt that what really was a true game time decision potentially. So at most 48 hours before that he was going to be the starting quarterback in Atlanta, and all the new pieces that they have on the offensive side. We all have kind of all, I feel like, prepared for them to be slow out of the gate, and then it happens, and then everybody's pissed, even though we knew this was coming with all the moving pieces they had. So the fact they are 2-0, haven't played a home game yet. And they did it, in my opinion, one of those 2 wins came against a quality opponent in the Atlanta Falcons. The overall body of work to me so far, so good for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
For sure. And then I think that despite Denver being a bad team, people say it all the time, it is hard to win in the NFL. And the fact that the Steelers are able to do that going on the road 2 weeks in a row,
altitude,
and starting 2-0 at altitude, I don't want to discredit the Steelers from doing that just because they're playing a bad team. And like you mentioned, we're talking about a team whose offense has so many moving parts this offseason. OC change, quarterback change, another quarterback change just because our starting quarterback is not going to be the starting quarterback for the first 2 weeks. We've had 3 players make their NFL debut on the offensive line. I think that is something that is going to blow by people and then not really put into consideration a ton. The fact that they're able to find ways to win still, and it helps when you have a top 3, arguably 1 defense in the NFL on the other side of the football to help you along the way. But the fact that they're getting enough from their offense through 2 weeks to be able to find themselves winning these games. I just think that the Steelers and Mike Tomlin deserve a ton of credit. Obviously, there's still lumps that we have to talk about. There's still lumps that they've had in these 2 games, but being able to start 2-0 and then having the ground gained on your divisional opponents already, which you're going to need because like we've talked about in prior episodes before the season, looking at the back half of the schedule, all it is divisional opponents as well as playing quality football teams. So the more you can gain prior to that post bye week schedule, that is going to help the Steelers later in the season stay in a quality position when it comes to what they're going to look like for postseason play. But I think that overall, starting 2-0 is something that fans should not just brush off and shouldn't. I don't think it would have been an expectation going into the season by a lot of people, considering the offense and the struggles that they had, and who knows what Justin Fields was going to look like at quarterback without Russell Wilson being able to make the start. But I think 2-0 is a great spot to be in. And even despite the offensive inefficiencies at times, I'm still seeing a lot of things from the team overall that I really like.
I actually want to start with the defensive side of the ball because they were playing 8 guys in the box a ton. They were kind of daring Bo Nix to be able to take advantage of them maybe not committing as much to the pass game, and he was still very bad in this game. To be honest with you, going back and watching, like, this isn't even an exaggeration. As somebody that has watched a lot of bad quarterback play for the Steelers over the last couple of years, that was one of the worst quarterback performances I've ever seen in my life. Like, Bo Nix was absolutely awful in that football game. And I think that kind of played into the way the Steelers played offense in the second half. I think they knew they didn't have to do much. So they took their foot off the gas. So for better or worse, I think that you can make that argument saying that shouldn't have been the case. But defensively, 11 carries for 17 yards on Javonte Williams. It seemed pretty apparent to me, at least, that they were saying, we're going to commit to stopping the run. We're going to have Bo Nix try to beat us, and he wasn't able to do it. I mean, they had one big play that came on that trickery, which I was very surprised that the Steelers actually did get fooled on, but then they turned it into a turnover. Cory Trice, which, from a football level, obviously awesome to see. On a personal level, just how happy are you for a guy like that to be able to come through in that big of a moment? And it was only on the field because Dante Jackson had to tap out like 2 plays prior. He said the elevation was getting to him a little bit. He actually had to leave that game like 2 different times. And for Cory Trice to come in and immediately get his first interception in the NFL, just such an awesome moment. But the defense as a whole, just another dominating performance. Can't say enough about what they've done up front. Cam Hayward, man, is back and healthy. Definitely looks like the Cam Hayward of old, especially against the run. I don't think that you've necessarily seen the pass rush juice, and I'm not sure what he has left in the tank there, but still very stout against the run. Larry Ogunjobi looks healthy. Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt with a sack each. Keanu Benton had a 3rd down pressure that Bo Nix tried to throw another interception. Unfortunately, Patrick Queen couldn't intercept it. He was able to detach his hands to get a pass deflection on it. But yeah, I mean, all around, just an awesome performance from the defense. I thought the corners and Deshaun Elliott with a tackle for loss as well. They did a 4-yard run where he just blew a play up. And having Patrick Queen, although he hasn't had the splash plays yet, having him do a lot of the jobs that he does, I feel like allows Deshaun Elliott to make plays like that. So yeah, I mean, I'm very comfortable with where this defense is. I understand the level of competition they've had through 2 games. But I mean, I felt this way, you felt this way, and I think everybody did, even like coming into the season. So it kind of just backs up the notion that we had.
Well, I know the level of competition, at least from Denver's standpoint, but going back to Atlanta, I mean, we were talking about it. They had Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Drake London. Like, the biggest question mark was what Kirk was going to look like post-injury. But as far
at
as
least 3
goes,
pretty good offensive linemen. Yeah,
they've got a decent offense. So through 2 games, defense has been super impressive. I mean, it was just echoed again in this game what I was saying last week. Every single facet of the game, defensive line, linebackers, secondary, has just been so much improved this season, which is why, as a unit, we're talking about every single week, is this a top 3 defense? Is this the best defense in the league? I thought they had a great game. I thought Bo Nix looked super uncomfortable. Even though he was only sacked twice, you could tell back there in the pocket he needed to make quick decisions and get his feet moving quick, because the Steelers, if he gave them enough time, they were going to get home more than twice in that game. It just was the fact that he got the ball, was able to either get the ball out or moved out of the pocket, but he could tell as a rookie quarterback, he was uncomfortable. Also, I got to say, I didn't mention it when you said it, but that is one of the funniest burns I think I've ever heard, is that you were a third-round player taken 12th overall. Like, that is such a dig at a player. That's an underrated dig.
Hey, props to him. But that's an indictment on the Denver Broncos, Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos, in my opinion. We talked about Sean Payton, too, because thought he coached an awful game on that side as well. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I want to ask you specifically about one player, because I feel like through 2 weeks, Deshaun Elliott has just been everything that we could have asked for and more. I think his name kind of flew under the radar when we hit free agency. But I really feel like he's just come in here and been an absolute game changer. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from Around the 412, and I just want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our folks at Game Changers. Their logo on the screen right now, right above my microphone. Over 2,000 different designs in their catalog. Luxury heavyweight material. I am wearing one of their shirts right now. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Head over to gamechanger.la or pick6.la to pick up some shirts. And guess what? Use code AT412. Save yourself $10 on your order every single time. Again, gamechanger.la or pick6.la. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Check them out. Maybe not my best transition to ask you a question then play the ad, but yeah, how have you felt about the addition to Deshaun Elliott?
I think that he is, and I have to preface this. I understand Patrick Queen was a signee as well, but I think that through 2 games, he is the best signee, at least performance-wise, what you've gotten out of him through the first 2 games of the season, especially compared to what expectations were. Like, I thought he was going to be a good player, but I just think he's balled out in these 2 games. He's been all over the field. I'd be willing to take it a step
further. I'd say he's the best acquisition, free agency, trade, or draft.
Well, yeah, I guess I should have worded it that. Like, that's what I mean. Like, he is the best player that they have acquired this offseason through 2 games. He's been all over the field. He has been a stud in pass coverage. You saw what he can do flying down and just basically meeting the ball carrier as he was getting the ball in the backfield in Denver with that 4-yard loss. He had the pick in week 1. I think that as the safety position goes, especially like strong safety next to Minkah, it's hard to, how do I phrase this? Not outclass Minkah, but in a way like be more noticeable than Minkah Fitzpatrick. And at times through these 2 weeks, he's been more noticeable to me, but in a good way. Normally, if you're a secondary player, it's not always a good thing if you're noticeable. But he has just been very impactful through these 2 weeks. I think it is a great acquisition for the Steelers. And also, shout out to Patrick Queen as well. I just mentioned him because he's the reason that Deshaun Elliott is also here. So got to give him his flowers too.
Yeah, I mean, they're flying around, they're making plays. It's been a lot of fun to watch for sure on the defensive side, and I just feel like that unit's just going to keep getting better and better. That is an interesting point, though, is that other safety spot typically just doing a lot of dirty jobs and kind of flying to the radar, and it's Minkah that you always notice making the splash plays. And Minkah's certainly been playing very well through the first
he's
2 weeks.
Still noticeable. I'm not saying
I'm
not saying
right.
Not,
but that is an interesting point that the guy opposite of him is also providing those types of splash plays that we really haven't seen from the opposite side in Minkah's tenure. I want to switch it now to the offensive side because the first half I thought was very good, despite only scoring 10 points. They did a lot of good things. I think that really penalties were what held them back from putting up a lot more points than they should have and could have. In the first half. In the second half, again, I don't know if it was just them taking their foot off the gas. Again, I think James Daniels even talked about, some guys having trouble dealing with the elevation, saying like, thank God we only come here once a year and only play here once. I'm not sure what all went into it, but there was a drastic change from the first half to the second half. Darnell Washington gets the first touchdown of the season, and right now their only touchdown of the season. Don't know how many people had that on their bingo cards. I certainly expected a big day for the tight ends, but I don't know if he was the one that I was circling. But when there's a game like that offensive performance, even watching it now, I've watched it 3 times. So I watched it live, went back and watched it, and then watched the all 22. It's still hard for me to evaluate guys like on the off when it's all the pieces that way. Like I thought George had a great game, to be honest. He only had 2 catches for 29 yards, but I thought he was taking Surtain's lunch for most of the day. And that's, to me, the number 1 corner in the league. Like PS2 is my number one guy at that spot. So I think that George is continuing to solidify that he is a true wide receiver one in this league. I think that there's certainly a noticeable hole on the other side of that. And I think that shined through in this game too. I mean, if we weren't getting separation against guys like Riley Moss and Levi Wallace. I mean, there's certainly a problem within that Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver room. And I've gotten to the point, Roman Wilson will be back on Sunday. I feel pretty good about saying that, but I don't know how much he's going to contribute right away either. Like, what is he even going to look like? That's the one guy I guess you have hope for in that room, being able to elevate a little bit. But yeah, right now it's just George. And I'm to the point now where I'm just like, play more tight ends or play guys like Ben Skowronek's now dealing with a shoulder injury. So, and it seems like it's somewhat severe based off the roster moves they've made. Because they brought back James Pierre, which to me signals they need a gunner for Sunday. So that's probably because Ben Skowronek's dealing with a shoulder thing. So I don't know how much time he's going to miss. But I was to the point where I'm like, just play him because I know that he can run block. Like, if we're not going to have guys that contribute as receivers, at the very least, give me a guy that can contribute in that facet. I don't know if the answer is giving Brandon Johnson a helmet. Again, maybe Roman Wilson does get acclimated a lot quicker than we think that he can. But, you know, we're talking, I know it's only 2 weeks, but man, I'm not seeing anything from the likes of Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin. Scotty Miller hasn't gotten a ton of reps, but I mean, when he's out there, it's not like he's done much. Like I'm not seeing it from a receiving perspective or a run blocking perspective from that group.
Yeah. And that's something we talked about last week, kind of expected going into this week as well. Like, I don't know that we were going to see significant changes against Denver in that facet.
Right.
Yeah. I look at the personnel and we weren't impressed going into the season. We knew the holes. We talked about it at like so many times, how they need to improve the wide receiver room and how when push comes to shove, they didn't get Ayuk. And that just shot them in the foot when it comes to the receivers because it was too little, too late, and they didn't do anything about it. Hopefully, Roman Wilson can come back and elevate his game from what you saw in the summer. And hopefully the coming back from injury doesn't take too long for him to get acclimated to like NFL game speed. But that is a lot of pressure to put on a rookie wide receiver to automatically come back and be your wide receiver too, because the other guys are just not getting it done. I've just about had it with Van Jefferson. I know people are questionable and whether they agree or disagree with the offensive PI call, but still, that put him in a bad regard in my eyes still because he was already in the doghouse for me. Calvin Austin, whatever people saw in OTAs, you're not seeing it now. You didn't see it in training camp. You're not seeing it in the regular season. I agree with you where I think that tight ends should get more of a look in the pass game. Obviously, Pat Freiermuth through 2 weeks. He was the second most targeted player in week 2. He had the most catches, or in week 1, he had the most catches in week 2. I think that he has a big impact, but I think that having, which actually Michael Pruitt is dealing with an injury as well. That doesn't help things. But I think that Darnell Washington, he scored the first touchdown, and he is more of as a tight end goes, he is more of a pseudo left tackle or a pseudo tackle compared to like a normal pass catching tight end, but get him more involved, especially in the red zone. You saw what he can do. He's just a big body out there. Throw it up to him and see what happens. I do think that Connor Hayward could also get a little more involved. I think that he could provide some offense for you that you're not getting from your receivers. The wide receiver room overall, this is just the bed that the Steelers have made, and they have to live with the consequences of that right now. I don't see how in a long-term way these receivers are going to get any better just because I think that they are who they are, and there's just not going to be a ton of change. Like I said, and you said, Roman Wilson is the one flyer in this where maybe you hit on him, maybe something changes whenever he comes back, and he could progress as the season goes along because he's a rookie. But everyone else, they've been in the NFL for a little while. You know what they are. They're just underwhelming football players. George, though, is a dog. He had probably the best 2-catch performance I've ever seen. And the huge PI call against Patrick Surtain on that play, what would have been a touchdown that got called back with offensive pass interference, like I mentioned with Van Jefferson. He, through 2 weeks, has shown why he is the number one wide receiver. He is an animal. He's a freak athlete. And like you had mentioned, Patrick Surtain, one of, if not the best cornerback in the league, he was taking his lunch. He was having a day with Patrick Surtain. Obviously, the box score doesn't say that, but what George Pickens has been able to do through 2 weeks, I don't think has been emulated by what his box score has said. He is such an impactful player. He deserves so much attention from opposing defenses. And I think that Steeler fans need to recognize how good this guy is being. And whatever bad you hear about George Pickens, whenever it comes to attitude, throw that all out the door. I think that he deserves, and this is jumping the gun a little bit, but like going in the next season, deserves to be paid handsomely as the Steelers' number one wide receiver. I think that he is a baller and is definitely the only guy in that room that is worth anything, worth a helmet right now, because you're not getting anything from any of your wide receivers. Your other wide receivers are your tight ends basically right now. And that kind of shows. Like you look at the targets, you look at the catches, you've got multiple tight ends and you got multiple even running backs. Like Jaylen Warren was third on the team in catches, tied with Van Jefferson. But like you have several other skill positions besides receiver leading in receptions. What does that say about your wide receiver room?
I was looking at the snaps here because I put out the snap counts yesterday. Van Jefferson played the most, 54 snaps, 82%. George Pickens played 51, 77%. Calvin Austin played 30, 46%. Scotty Miller played 14, 21%. Ben Skowronek played 6, 9%. Again, I don't know that Ben Skowronek is going to be able to be a part of the equation moving forward. I kind of wonder where Roman slots in there. But yeah, I mean, he's the X factor to this room. If it's going to be any good beyond George Pickens, it's going to be because he all of a sudden has elevated his game to a level that we really can't foresee happening, just because he didn't get to play it all in the preseason. He didn't even get through a few plays of padded practice. So, I mean, it's just hard for me to forecast him having a big role and all of a sudden being a massive part of this. So yeah, but my point about the tight ends, I wasn't even necessarily talking about his receiving options, just playing them on the field more because I trust them to block
more
better.
12 personnel.
Yeah, like 12 and 13 personnel. Like that is, I think that's probably the only path forward. Connor Hayward's an interesting shout. He jumped from 5 snaps to 14 snaps from week 1 to week 2. Everybody else kind of went down amongst the tight ends. So that would be interesting if he were to continue to increase his role. I'm not necessarily advocating for that, just saying, looking at the trends here of the way things are kind of going. But yeah, I don't know that there's a solution right now that's going to happen within that wide receiver room. To your point about George, he has 57 receiving yards per game right now for a team that doesn't even have 275 passing yards on the season. So, I mean, yeah, he's got 114 yards. Justin Fields has 273.
And that's including a game where he should have had more and he only had 2 catches for 29 yards.
Yeah. I mean, the one he was the recipient on that Justin Fields beautiful throw that came back on Broderick's third penalty of that drive, which is, I guess, where we can shift our focus to now is the offensive line. I don't understand the plan that they went in with Troy Fautanu and Broderick Jones going to rotate. So Troy starts the game, plays the first 2 series, and then we see Broderick come in. And he commits 3 penalties on one drive, and then we don't see him again. I mean, Broderick is clearly very hurt. Like, I think that they are doing him a huge disservice right now. Not only, like, physically because he's hurt and having him play through it, but just from perception, too. Because I think as fans, we're watching this happen, and a lot of people are now giving up on the guy. Whereas, like, if we just weren't seeing him at all, and he was hurt, put on IR, whatever was going on. If we just weren't seeing him at all, we wouldn't be losing faith in him as a prospect. But because we're watching him struggle the way that he has, despite being injured, I don't think that is necessarily getting taken into account here. And I think that people are strapping the bus label to him already because of it.
Yeah, I don't like the way the Steelers are approaching the whole tackle situation. I think that they should have just played Troy Fautanu like we were expecting to be played, because we talked about it literally the day before on the Steelers afternoon or Steelers Saturday sit down. I keep wanting to say Steelers afternoon drive. I'm not on that
It's
show.
fun. Hey, I was just saying I did it last week, but
I'm not on that show. But we talked about how Troy Fautano, expecting him to start, how Dan Moore Jr. was going to be playing left tackle still, and we weren't expecting to see Broderick Jones. Comes out a little before the game that they're expecting to play both guys. I just don't understand that. I know that there are positions, not really in the NFL, but at least in college, like say for the quarterback, for example, there are teams that have two guys that they like that will have 2 drives out of one quarterback, 2 drives out of another, and then maybe feel out the game from there. But those drives are scripted. I do not understand that from a tackle standpoint. One, because of the continuity of the offensive line and them being able to mesh together. I feel like if you are James Daniels, now maybe James Daniels is a pro and obviously he's very good, but like having the same guy to your right, I feel like is more it leads to a better output for your offense than having to switch back and forth between guys. So just from a decision standpoint, I don't understand why you would do that, even if both were healthy. And if both aren't healthy, why are you playing Broderick? Like if he's not able to get the same punch, the same blocking set, why are you putting him out there if you know that that is a problem? And
did you hear what Tomlin's answer was regarding that? Why they were rotating tackles?
No, I didn't.
So he said it was more of a conditioning thing because Troy was just coming back. Obviously, he hadn't played since the first preseason game, and also the altitude. That doesn't make sense to me.
They weren't rotating Dan Moore.
Well, yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, if you're going to bring conditioning into it, like, I don't believe that Troy Fautano was going to be that out of shape that you needed to rotate Broderick Jones in. I just don't believe that.
Yeah, in the altitude thing, Troy played in the Pac-12. So he's played in Colorado. He's played against Colorado State.
Yeah.
Like he's played in those conditions before.
He's played at Utah.
At least, yeah. So that part didn't really make sense to me. So I mean,
I'm not buying it.
It didn't even check from that perspective. I think it was a bad decision. I think the way that they've handled this entire thing has been pretty poor.
If he's injured, why are you even putting him out there? And I'm not saying that prior to injury he was perfect. Like he wasn't. And even at times, like going back to last year, he wasn't perfect. Good run blocker, but like as a pass pro, still so much to work on with Broderick Jones. And we knew that going into the draft pick. We talked about it when he was selected, that this is not going to be a day one starter, and he's going to be kind of a project player that you're going to work into a potential starting left tackle, but he's not going to be that right away. If he still is that player, which he is right now, and that same player is not healthy, I don't think it's smart to have him out there. It just does not make sense to me whatsoever.
It's getting worse. Like the injury. I think because now I mentioned this on Steelers Saturday Sit Down, but for anybody that doesn't watch that and hasn't heard this yet, I mean, I feel pretty comfortable with the information that I've gotten. He's dealing with a thumb injury on that same side now, also on that right. And if you look at, there was a picture that we used for Steelers Afternoon Drive yesterday, the thumbnail, and that was a picture that Ed Thompson got. If you see the way that he's standing, it's his right arm that's kind of down to his side. It looks like the Michelin Man, the way that his right arm looks with all the protection that he's got there now. Like it's I think the injury with his elbow has continued to get worse, and he has more padding there now. It's hyperextended is what he's dealing with the elbow. Now, I've talked with a former Steelers offensive lineman that had the same injury, and they said like they played through it. It was very painful. They didn't feel as impactful, and they didn't feel right until they got to the off season. So very well, we could at this point be looking at a lost season for Broderick, which, to be honest with you, like I would be more comfortable with than having to see him play like this again. And I would feel better about the organization doing that. Just sitting him down, even if it's like he's getting practice reps because there's not that much contact in practice, but just getting him more comfortable with the technique and the footwork and stuff on the left side, like that stuff's fine. But I don't think that it would be smart to put him into a game situation in the near future. Like get him out, get him healthy, get him acclimated on the left side if that's what you want to do. To be honest, I contend their best way forward would be with Troy on the left side, Broderick on the right, but that's neither here nor there. Doesn't seem like that's the path they're going. But whatever they want to do, I don't see a path towards him getting game reps in the near future, or he shouldn't.
I don't think he should either. I think that if he's dealing with injury enough to where even at healthy, he's questionable out there and questionable about his performance. But when he's injured enough to where it's going to be seriously harping on his performance, why even risk it? Why risk the possibility of, one, making your offensive line worse, but also two, making the injury worse and making Broderick worse because of it? I don't think that is a smart decision by the Steelers. And I think that if he had to take the year off and basically, like you were saying, work in stuff in practice, but as far as games goes, we're not going to see Broderick Jones. I would rather do that than have him be in there when he shouldn't be, because I think that there's a real argument that what they would be doing if they continued to do it the entire season by playing him injured and him not being able to refine himself as that tackle, that's probably hurting him as a player.
100%.
It's 100% hurting him as a player, hurting his development. And the player that the Steelers and fans thought they could be getting at the end of that development, the project of what Broderick Jones was going to be, you're not going to hit that ceiling if you continue to play him right now. And I just don't think that his play on the field is going to be able to suffice that decision. And I just don't think it's going to cut it.
Smitty from around the 412 here. And while I may not have much hair, the hair that I do have will not be cut by anybody besides Keek at Keek's Barbershop. My friend Christian Circle, been with us since day one. Keek's Barbershop, located 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app, The Cut. Book an appointment with Christian today, or you can do walk-in with Tony or Ashley. But again, Keek's Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Go check them out. Old school vibe in there. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend them enough. Wouldn't go anywhere else. Maybe I'll see you there. Very nicely done. It's a haircut weekend for me, so I will be at Keek's Barbershop this weekend. And I'm also getting
Maybe
some...
you will see them there.
I got some blonde already thrown in my hair, but it has to be lighter, so I haven't really shown anybody yet. Like right now, it's...
So you're not going to turn around right now?
No.
Okay.
I'll send you a picture after this, but
right.
it's got to be lighter. So Jenny's coming over after I get my hair cut and lightening it again. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Broderick Jones, should not be in the lineup right now. And to be honest, I kind of wonder what the path would have been if they had Dylan Cook healthy as well. And they're going to get him back in the near future. And I almost wonder if at that point they swap spots on the IR. Like, could Broderick go on the IR when Dylan Cook comes back?
I hope so. Mainly just because it makes no sense to me to have him even active if he's going to be not only playing the way he is, but playing the way he is injured. And I don't even want the Steelers to be tempted with the idea of playing both of them again, which I don't think they will be going forward based off of the performance. I think that one drive really showed how bad the injury is playing into Broderick Jones, as well as he just needs to develop more. If Dylan Cook comes back and they swap places on the IR, I think that's the best things for the Steelers. I think it's the best thing for the offensive line. It's probably the best thing for Broderick Jones. Just get healthy. Get healthy so you can be able to develop as a player.
Yeah. It's where I'm at with it right now as well. I don't know, if he can get healthy during this season, or again, if it's going to be a lost season, but whatever that results in, I just think that the path forward right now can not be him getting reps on game days. Last thing I want to talk about is the quarterback stuff. Certainly sounds like Justin Fields will start against the Chargers. I think we've kind of been trending in that direction even before last week's game. We were kind of talking about it. Like, we thought this one against the Chargers for sure. And then it's kind of up in the air for Indy. But where are you at with this? Like, through 2 games, I thought the best half that Justin played was the first half of the second game. But then again, just so hard to evaluate what happened in the second half. They didn't even do like the QB runs for whatever reason last week, as opposed to in week 1 that we saw. I don't think that the full playbook has been at his disposal. I think he's done a great job at not turning the football over. And I say all this to kind of say it almost feels like he's been given a backup quarterback plan. Like they're kind of just saying, hey, like manage the game for us. And if that's the case, I don't know that they have the intent for him to win this job over Russell Wilson for the duration of the season once Russell's healthy. Like I'm not saying that the writing's on the wall for me there. If he goes up and lights it up against the Chargers, maybe I'm changing my tune. But as I sit here right now through 2 games, I still don't see him starting over Russ once Russ is back.
I don't either. And I mentioned this last week whenever we talked about his performance against Atlanta. I thought that Justin Fields' performance was good enough where I would be considering him starting in Denver, and that was before we knew for sure that he was going to be starting in Denver anyway. But I think that looking at his performance in Denver, yeah, the first half was awesome, but the second half, like what was happening? And that wasn't just him. It was just all of the offense as a whole. There was just nothing going on. They crossed the 50-yard line once. And the one time that was just the field goal that Boswell made, the 53-yarder. Everything else was pretty poor in that second half. And I came away from it. Actually, I want to mention this in 2 things. I came away from that game different than I did the first game, where I feel like as soon as Russ is back, he's the starter. And that came to me from just, I feel like I need to see what Russ is able to do, because right now, I don't feel like the Steelers, despite what good things they have shown offensively in certain spurts, are really driving offense. And maybe they don't even do that with Russell Wilson coming back, but I at least need to see it to be able to believe that. And what you were saying, and this is the second thing I wanted to mention, with how they were preparing for Justin Fields and if they are just giving him a backup playbook, I think that is an interesting idea to talk about, because we went into this game talking about how they have the full week with Justin Fields. They know he's going to be the starting quarterback, and they get to prepare for a Justin Fields run offense like he's the starting quarterback. But the play calling, the design, none of it shouted out that this is a Justin Fields offense.
Week 1 looked more like it.
It did not say to me at all that this is the play design for Justin Fields specifically, which I think is an interesting concept. Like, is Justin Fields so far behind Russell Wilson in their eyes that they're not even preparing him differently for the offense just because of the skill set? They're still playing him like he would be Russ's backup quarterback. Like, say if Kyle Allen was the backup quarterback right now, would the offensive play calls look any different on Sunday versus Denver than what you got with Justin Fields? I don't really think so. Like, you didn't see anything that I thought were utilizing the best parts of Justin Fields' games. So I think that's an interesting idea, that they are not conditioning him to be potentially the starting quarterback. They're not preparing him in a way that he could take over the job. And I think that the Steelers are sold into the idea that Russell Wilson is just going to be the starter as soon as he comes back from that calf injury. And to be honest, like I mentioned, I'm bought into that idea more just because I need to see if Russ can drive the offense more. I need to see if Russ can have a more consistent offense than what we've seen from Justin. And to Justin's credit, he has managed the games well. He hasn't turned over the football, which I think you have to give him his flowers for. That could have been a big concern going into the season, knowing that he was going to be starting multiple games to start the season, because we assumed that it was going to be Russell Wilson going into it. But at the same time, I just don't think I've seen enough from Justin Fields in the 2 games, even despite if the games are not prepared for him. I don't think I've seen enough where I'm like, okay, I want him to be the starter still, even if Russell Wilson's healthy. I need Russell Wilson to start, mainly for my own curiosity of how different will the offense look, if at all. And if it gets worse, then you may have a bigger problem for one, but a more clear answer if you go back to Justin. But if he gets better, then it kind of answers your question of should Justin be the starter in the first place.
What's funny to me, and this is with most things that we talk about, is like we're having a conversation about this, and who knows what the Steelers are even thinking. Like, again, people could have talked themselves into the idea that Justin could win this job, when in the Steelers' mind, that was never going to happen. Like, who knows? So I think it's going to be. I was texting him today about it, actually. because this is going to be very telling to me what week 3 looks like. It's, in my opinion, it's going to be Justin Fields that starts this game. I know it hasn't officially been said yet, but it was kind of the same wording. They're preparing Justin to start this game. I think that's going to be the case. It'll be very telling to me if it looks the same, because if they don't open things up more, then I think it's just, hey, we're trying to get through one more week. Don't screw this up. Russ is getting the keys back after this.
Like, I know this is probably a bad comparison because it's so long ago, completely different regime and everything. But think about when Michael Vick came in 9 years ago, like the offense was different because Michael Vick was their quarterback. And I know it's, like I said, different regime, different coordinators. That was 9 years ago. Not trying to compare the two situations that much, besides the fact that offenses are able to prepare differently for different starting quarterbacks, and they're able to prepare the offense for a more suitable outcome for those starting quarterbacks. You haven't really seen that from Justin Fields. Like, I know the Bears offense was bad and ran poorly, but the Bears in 3 seasons did a better job using Justin Fields as Justin Fields than what the Steelers have done through 2 weeks, and you haven't seen anything remotely close to it.
Yeah, I mean, to give them some credence to their benefit, there's a lot of moving pieces here with the offensive line, obviously with the offensive coordinator and stuff, as well as Justin in the receiving room, everything really about this team besides the running backs. So again, maybe if things change in week 3, my mind will change. But as we sit here right now, I just don't think that they've treated it seriously enough to say that Justin has a shot at winning the starting job.
So where are you on it? Where, like, if the Chargers was up in the air for who the starting quarterback is, are you still just Russell Wilson starts as soon as he's healthy, or are you still up in the air with it?
In terms of what I think?
Yeah, like what you would do.
Oh, well, I mean, what I would have done was starting Justin to begin with, but I would have given him full reign of everything from the jump as well, and I just don't think that that's happening. So,
well, that's why I mean, through 2 weeks of performances, if nothing with the offense is going to change, are you going back to Russell Wilson?
Yeah, if they're not going to give Justin, like, actually let Justin be Justin, then yes. I don't think it makes sense to continue to play him if you're not going to take the shackles off. Like, again, like you said, they're kind of taking out the elements that make him the player that he can be. Like, if you're not going to have any QB runs in the offense, not going to do a bunch of bootleg stuff, not do play action, you might as well not start the guy. Like, that's why I just don't think that right now this offense looks like an offense that's just trying to bide their time until their starting quarterback comes back. That's what I see.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And I think as far as like what defense or offensive performances go, speaking to the Denver second half, it's really easy. And I don't agree with it. I don't think they should take their foot off the gas if that was the case. Even if guys are tired, I don't think you should take your foot off the gas that much. But it is really easy and becomes comfortable to be able to do that when you do have the defense that you do on the other side of the football. Like, being able to know that your defense is not going to give up anything is very comfortable for a poor offense.
My one thing, though, is, and again, it's only through 2 weeks, so unless this becomes a thing throughout the rest of the season, I don't feel like I have to spend too much time on it and bring it up. But if that continues to be the case, how much different is that than like when Kenny Pickett was here? You know what I mean?
Well, it's not.
I thought the entire idea,
it's not.
Yeah, I thought the entire idea was to improve on the offensive side to not be in this situation. But if we're just to do the same thing anyway, like, what was the point of upgrading at these spots at QB and OC and hopefully the offensive line? Like, there
would be no point. The only difference is you also upgraded the defense too. That's the only difference.
Sure. And this offense looks like it's an offense that can at least sustain drives a bit better and control the clock, control time of possession. But, again, like, if it's just really still going to be all about just not screwing up, not turning the football over and playing good defense, conversations to be the same thing as last year and previous years. So, but we'll see. Anything else to add?
No, I think it's going to be an interesting game that we're going to talk about on Steelers Saturday sit down coming up against the Chargers. Two teams with not that great of wide receiver rooms. So we're going to see how
two of the 9 teams in the NFL that are 2-0.
Yeah, that is also another thing that's crazy. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, you would have told me that the Steelers are starting 2-0 and the Bengals and the Ravens are 0-2. I don't know that I would have believed you, especially with who the Bengals played in week 1. Like I think it's
and I'm not that high in the Chargers, but I would believe that they'd be 2-0. I mean, Raiders. I know the Raiders beat the Ravens last week, but they beat the Raiders and Panthers, so it's not like that's totally out of the realm of possibility that they would be 2-0 to start. The Steelers being 2-0 isn't necessarily the surprise there. It's more so the Bengals and Ravens being 0-2. So, that's where I'm at with it. You'll have to join Steelers Saturday Sit down this upcoming Saturday to hear us talk about the matchup with the LA Chargers, get our picks and stuff on that, the matchups to watch. So be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. That will be a live stream, but of course you can watch it back if you weren't able to tap in during the live stream, but be sure to catch that. In the description of this show, you will find the GoFundMe link, Year 7, rocking around the 412. Actually just reached out to Kaylee today and was talking with her, and she already got 10 tags. Insane. She's the absolute best. If you hear me talk about Kaylee, that is the mother of Isla, who that's the daughter of Dalton that we lost in 2022, and why we do the stuff that we do with the East Rochester Salvation Army in his name. Kaylee's the best. Absolutely awesome. Sure, I get 10 tags. Hours after I texted her and was like, hey, this is kind of like when we pick up the mission. Like, I put out the video on my Twitter account yesterday. She made a little flyer as well today for the stuff that we do with the Salvation Army. So very excited about that. Every single penny that is donated to the mission goes directly to those causes, whether it's local families in the 724 and 412 area or the East Rochester Salvation Army to adopt tags off their angel tree that they do every year at Christmas in the name of our late friend Dalton Keene. Have enjoyed doing that for the last couple of years. This is year 3 of doing that, and I expect that to continue as well. So very excited about that aspect of the mission. There's also some other links in there, including Everything Custom Designs, our friend Haley Wagner Small Business, custom t-shirts, hoodies, long sleeve tees. She also has our merch on the site. I'm wearing the white with black font and then the 412 in yellow on there right now. Yes, I said yellow and not gold, because to me this is specifically yellow that's on this design. Not saying the team colors are yellow, but this design is. Anyways, so be sure to check that out. But you know what? Let me just tell you more about her. Need a custom t-shirt, hoodie, tumbler? Stop what you're doing. Don't go anywhere else. Check out the link in the description. Everything Custom Designs, our friend Haley Wagner, small business. She can do all that for you. She even does around the 412 merch, t-shirts, hoodies, long sleeve tees, bunch of different stuff. I even got a tumbler from her as well. So go check out the link in the description. Goes directly to her Facebook page. All of her stuff can be found there. Again, Everything Custom Designs. Haley Wagner. She does great work. Can't recommend her enough. Go check it out. And we are about a month and a half until Halloween. So hit her up. She can help you out with some Halloween stuff.
We got a lot of holidays coming up. You're going to hear a lot about the holiday ads as well, because she hooks it up during holiday season.
Getting to be that time of the season. Yep, absolutely. So be sure to do that. Also, we have our shorts, DC4L Customs, down in the description as well. And then Game Changers, which we played the ad for. Save yourself $10 at checkout using code AT412 at gamechanger.la or pick6.la. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell here. Hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything that we talked about today, a question for a future episode, or if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe over there. And then don't forget to follow us on everything at Around the 412. For Tyler, for Smitty, this has been the Around the 412 Steelers Show. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.